Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. Trump's told the killing in Iran has stopped and there's no plan for executions, but he doesn't rule out a military intervention. Venezuela's opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado visits the White House following the U.S. capture of Nicolas Maduro. And a complete retreat from Elon Musk as X announces it will remove the editing function on Grok, which has led to widespread sexualized deepfakes. Now, President Donald Trump has been told the killing in Iran has stopped and the executions won't take place, but still won't rule out military action. According to the family of Irfan Soltani, the 26-year-old arrested during the demonstrations, he had been scheduled to be put to death on Wednesday. Here's what President Trump had to say.
We've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping, and it's stopped, and it's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or executions. So I've been told that on good authority. We'll find out about it. I'm sure if it happens, we'll all be very upset, including you will be very upset, but that's just gotten to me, some information that the killing has stopped, that the executions have stopped. They're not going to have an execution, which a lot of people were talking about for the last couple of days. Today was going to be the day of execution.
We can now speak to former U.S. official Bijan Kian, who joins us from Los Angeles. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining me. So Donald Trump says the killing in Iran has stopped. Trump seems to have changed his rhetoric on Iran in the last few days. What does this mean for the protesters? He promised help was on the way.
Well, good to be with you. It's all very confusing. And, if you know President Trump, you know that there are two things about him that we must all remember. One, he doesn't like people to read his mind. He constantly is shifting from one position to another. And if you've read his book, The Art of the Deal, he is negotiating this way. He escalates, he backs down, he retreats, he comes back strong. But what he does next is not known. The protesters are expecting the people of Iran to take full credit for this revolution. In my view, Islamic Republic has no chance of survival. I listened not to President Trump this time, but the German Chancellor, who has said the Islamic Republic has no chance of survival. It's unfortunate that the second thing about President Trump is that he may say things like they've told us the killing has stopped on good authority, but I don't think he believes exactly what he hears from people who've been lying and cheating for 47 years. So President Trump, in one word, is unpredictable. And this is frustrating for people on the streets, very frustrating. I believe the perception is that President Trump is going to come, change the government and replace it with a new government. That is not going to happen. We've been very consistent. We've said consistently that every country follows their own interest. And President Trump and the people of Iran, the United States and the people of Iran have a common interest, and that is to remove the menace of Islamic Republic from the people of Iran, from the region, the Persian Gulf, and the world as a security threat. So there is a shared area, but to expect President Trump to change the government and replace it is not something he would do. He will serve America's interest in any way he can, using all the tools available to him. Now, having said all of this, how do we balance this conflict, this double talk? Well, there's a lot of movements. There's a lot of movements and military movements, and as we've seen, we should not take any indication all the way to a conclusion. We just have to see what President Trump wants to do. But this revolution is not President Trump's revolution. This is the Iranian people's revolution. They own it. They have the right. They have the responsibility. They're going to fight. They're going to win. They are not going to leave this government alone. Almost 80% or more of Iranians don't want this regime. They have said that loudly. They have been moving together in a very harmonized way. And the killing has continued because the regime is so afraid that people are going to win. They're not afraid of America as much as they're afraid of their own people. And it's because they have nothing to lose, Leigh-Ann. They have nothing to lose. They have been fighting and fighting, and they will continue this fight all the way to end.
But,
because they can see.
But Bijan, I just wanted to just ask you a question. You say they have nothing to lose, but we don't know the exact numbers of the death toll, but around 2,400 people have lost their lives. As I said, there's been an internet blackout. It's difficult to know that exact number. And there are reports that the protests on the streets of Iran have stopped, and that's because the killings have had such a chilling effect on society. So there is concern that these people will lose their lives if they do continue to call for change.
Leigh-Ann, you said yourself it's very hard to get information from Iran, and yet you speak with some confidence about some numbers, and you refer to what you hear from Iran. Who are you talking to? If you talk to the people, they will tell you they don't want this regime. They will continue this fight all the way to the end. And revolutions are like spring weather. They have moments of surge and moments of quiet. Remember, this is unarmed people fighting for their lives. When I said they have nothing to lose, I meant they must accomplish what their goal is. Their goal is to remove this government, and they're going to do that. And they have the support of a unified voice and a unifier. I think Prince Reza Pahlavi has done a great job. 47 years, and we didn't see this scale, this level of togetherness on the streets. Millions of people are coming out because they are fed up. When I say have nothing to lose, is like their money has gone down to almost no value. If you throw money on the streets of Tehran, it probably takes more cost to clean it up than to pick it up. The money's value has gone to almost levels that you cannot afford living a normal life in Iran. So how could this continue? How can this government claim that I'm going to continue killing until people give up? That's not how it works. When I say people have nothing to lose, it's a matter of paying their electricity bill or buying bread. That's a difficult situation. I don't believe that's sustainable. So to say that the protests have died down, everything's okay, and I can understand, every country has their own interest, and the lobbying that goes on in these cases is just amazing. People of Iran are not just fighting against armed oppressors who killed them. They're also fighting against those who hold their own interest. Who's talking for the interest of the Iranian people? Their own government doesn't, and the neighbors, everybody follows their own interest. So at the end, I think that principle remains that no country is going to do anything for another country unless there is a benefit for them in doing so. And that's the rule. And you asked about how the people feel. They don't feel so good about that. But this is their revolution. They should expect to finish the job. And if others come and help, that would be great. This country, my country, United States of America, 250 years ago, was fighting a similar situation with a mighty, empire, British Empire. And, who came to their help? Lafayette, Rochambeau, and people like Kosciuszko, the Polish general, the engineer who came in, helped them. So help is welcome. People of Iran are appreciating that. This coincidence of interest is something that they welcome. But to expect another country to come and sort of finish the job is neither realistic nor something they should. Nonetheless, this is the emotion. Very emotional moments. People are getting killed, and they're saying, who is our voice? Why aren't we heard? Why is it that people rely on, on authority? They said killing has stopped. Why don't they listen to us? It's very frustrating.
And
But
I just want to ask one quick
the good
question.
news is you never know what President Trump is going to do next, no matter what he says.
And I think that is a really interesting point, because I think a lot of people are holding their breath at the moment. And you're right to say that, because we never know what the next move is. But in the last hour or so, the US has imposed sanctions on Iran, on security officials and banking networks. They accusing them of orchestrating a violent crackdown on the peaceful protesters that we've just been talking about. So is the aim here, you spoke to me about the cost of living. We know inflation in Iran is running at somewhere between 40 and 50%. This is why the protesters started, because of the weakening economy and how difficult it is. So will these further sanctions from the US make that even more difficult for the people living in Iran?
Yeah, you have a corrupt system that doesn't matter, with or without sanctions. This corrupt system is stealing people's money systematically. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. People of Iran are fed up. You said they are angry at prices and devaluation of their currency. I don't think that is accurate. It is not accurate. There've never been a cry louder than "we don't want this regime." I don't understand why outlets, consistently misinterpret. What is it that you guys don't hear? Don't you hear the people of Iran not wanting? Don't you see people going to the streets to get shot? They're giving their lives because they don't want this regime. And you casually say, oh, they're just complaining about bread. They're not. They are fed up. 47 years of ineptitude, incompetence, corruption, brutality, tyranny. The fabric of the society is torn apart because of this tyrannical government. They don't want it. Please listen to them. Talk to the people. You talk to the regime officials and expect to hear the truth from people who've been lying and cheating for 47 years, and you take it from them that on good authority, as President Trump said. Now, when President Trump says it, I don't get really upset, because I know President Trump may look one way and hit another way. So, but when the media repeats this, that this is people complain, no, people don't want the Islamic Republic. And I know some countries in the region want the Islamic Republic to stay, as weak as it may be. But people of Iran don't agree with that. So who's going to win? Who's going to win? 90 million people or the outside interest? I think everybody's going to follow their own interest, including people of Iran. They will fight and they will win. And this is the spirit on the streets today. Millions of people saying, we don't want this regime. And what they want is a free election. They want to have the ability to elect the kind of government they want, the people they want to see in power, the people they trust. And, I understand that this may not match the interest of many other countries and entities that may have conflicting interests. That's fine. That's the reality of the world. The question is, whose right is it to determine for the people of Iran what kind of government they should have, or if the whole world should help? Got to remember, history will judge the reactions of everybody. People of Iran are getting killed. And the reaction is, oh, it's going to be okay. They're fine. They'll be fine. I think history will judge that. History has judged people's behavior and countries' behavior.
Bijan Kian, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to leave it there because we've run out of time. But it was very interesting speaking to you. And like you said, we'll have to wait to see what Donald Trump does next. Thank you.
People are going to win. Thank you.
Let's get into this further with retired Commodore Chitrapu Uday Bhaskar, former military officer in the Indian Navy. Commodore, thank you so much for joining me. First of all, where does India stand in Iran-US relations?
India has followed the developments in Iran and expressed concern at what is happening. But it has not in any way taken a definitive position about either supporting the United States and US policy or denouncing the regime in Tehran. India has encouraged a peaceful resolution of the current turbulence and the protests that have led to the deaths of almost 2,400 people, as you had pointed out. But yes, India has interests as far as Iran is concerned across a wide range of issues. Iran is a very important regional country. Stability in Iran or instability in Iran would have an implication for India. That's on the geopolitical side. Iran is also an important energy supplier in the region. And any instability or disruption within Iran would have an impact on global energy stability and prices, which would have an impact on India. And India also has a large diaspora in that part of the world. And their safety and protection is the primary interest at this point, as we are looking at the protests in Iran entering their third week. So it is a wide range of interests as far as India is concerned.
And that's what I wanted to speak to you about, the diaspora, because India issued an advisory asking Indian nationals currently in Iran to leave the country at the earliest. But things appear to be calmer today. Where are things in Iran likely to go from here?
The latest reports seem to suggest that things are now, in a way, becoming less turbulent, less bloody, less violent than they were even a few hours ago. And the fact that US President Donald Trump has said that he is not contemplating a military strike, and that there has been some kind of a quiet below-the-radar negotiations, diplomatic negotiations between Washington and Tehran, seems to have calmed the situation. Because contrary to what your earlier American guest had said, I have a different view, which is that the more the United States ratchets up the military pressure, it in a way allows the regime to stoke nationalism. Because despite the fact that the Iranians have been frustrated, angry with the regime for over 40 years, the moment you talk about the United States or foreign entities trying to interfere and seek a regime change, I think then the population rallies around the regime, and this has happened in the past. Which is why, looking at the developments over the last few hours, I would say that perhaps the protests are calming down and the regime in Tehran will speak to the people and try and address their economic and the inflation kind of situation that you had referred to in your remarks. And that perhaps, and I want to underline the word perhaps, there might be some kind of a lowering of temperatures all across Iran. But I do agree that this is unprecedented. The fact that mosques have been torched in an Islamic republic, to me, was a very significant kind of indicator, because I've been following Iran for many years. My first visit to Iran was in 1970, which is more than 50 years ago. And looking at what has happened over the last 4 or 5 decades, this is the first time that I have seen the people of Iran giving vent to their anger in this manner. And as I said, mosques have been torched in a large number across Iran. This is unprecedented. But the more the United States uses the military card, I think the people are likely to support the regime as part of the nationalist fervor. And this has been said so many times in relation to West Asia and many of the Arab and Islamic countries there. The US can effect a regime change. They did this in Libya. They did this in Iraq. But you cannot impose rhythm change. Iran is a very old civilizational state. I mean, recorded history of Iran goes back to the 7th century BC. We are talking about a people who have a continuity and a pedigree that's almost 3,000 years plus. And in this kind of a society, they yearn for a more equitable kind of governance. They are not going to give up on the Islamic orientation. And what happened in 1953 when the United States snuffed out democracy with then Prime Minister Mohammed Mossadegh. The way we are now, there is a sense of deja vu. Is the United States really keen on supporting democracy? Or do they want another regime, like the Shah in the past, who will be part of the larger United States and its military alliance in the region? I mean, let's not forget, when the senior Shah was there in the 60s, Iran, Turkey, and Pakistan were the three principal allies of the United States. There was no talk of democracy. They were called the RGC countries, bound by religion, geography, and culture. So I think when we look at the United States, we perhaps might want to step back and try and get a sense about what is the objective of the US and President Donald Trump in particular. Now, I know this has been said in the past, I say it again, that is it the Nobel Prize for President Trump? Is it a larger US interest in the region? Is it a proxy for Israel? Because Iran is a complex country. It's not Iraq. It's not Venezuela. It's not Libya. And unless there is some clarity about what is the US objective, there was one objective, which is to prevent Iran from getting the bomb. But we know what happened between President Obama's initiative and where we are now. So I think these have to be unpacked more carefully. But for now, I do not think a regime change is on the cards. The probability seems to have reduced.
Retired Commodore
Chitrapu.
I do apologise, retired Commodore Chitrapu Uday Bhaskar. We have run out of time, but as always, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. An ICE officer has shot a man in the leg during a traffic stop in Minneapolis, triggering fresh clashes with protesters. Federal officials say the man resisted arrest and attacked an officer, though details have not been verified. The shooting comes days after an ICE agent killed a woman in the city, intensifying calls for federal officers to leave. NATO troops from France, Germany, Sweden and Norway have begun arriving in Greenland for training and observation. It follows talks in Washington which failed to resolve a dispute over the Arctic island. President Trump has again suggested the US could take control, while Denmark insists Greenland's sovereignty must be respected. Polls have opened in Uganda's election, but voting has been disrupted by technical glitches and an internet shutdown. Long queues formed in Kampala as biometric machines failed and some materials didn't arrive. The current president is seeking a seventh term against a pop star turned politician, Bobi Wine, amid heightened security. Now, Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, will visit the White House today after an invite from President Donald Trump. It follows a US military operation in Venezuela, which resulted in the capture of President Nicolas Maduro. Today's meeting has been widely anticipated following Trump's decision to back Maduro's Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, as well as his past desire to obtain the Nobel Peace Prize, which was awarded to Machado. We can get the latest reaction with Venezuelan journalist Diego Sequera, who lives in Caracas. Diego, pleasure to have you on the show. Before we get into the conversation about Machado, I want to ask you about the US, which has seized another Venezuelan-linked tanker ahead of this meeting between Trump and Venezuela's opposition leader. The US is clearly still applying pressure.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's clear. It has been also clear by the statements of Rubio or Trump, for that matter, regarding we can call it even economic terrorism, if you will, to keep up precisely the pressure points where they're able to actually ensue that kind of pressure, that kind of threats. So it makes sense that this is going to be one of the things they're going to exploit during this moment we're in right now.
And can Machado convince Donald Trump she is still worth supporting as they do hold this high-stakes meeting at the White House today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the first question is it actually that high stakes? Hard to foresee, hard to foretell what could come after that. It depends, I guess, also the maneuvering around Trump's entourage, especially Rubio, and how he's able to persuade him or not to focus on the capabilities or whatever that Maria Corina Machado could have, according to Rubio. But at the same time, I mean, it has been clear how, first of all, it has been quite clear the way Trump has no actual sympathy to this point, other than the closest has been cordiality to some extent. And also what he has already said about her being able to manage this kind of situation, to running a country, and especially doing the actual regime change, which will provoke a lot of negative reactions inside Venezuela. So I think that's also something that's been taken into account. But it's, you know, it's Trump, so it's really hard to anticipate definitively about what he could do next.
And Diego, after the US captured Maduro, like you said, President Trump ultimately decided Machado would not be able to stabilize Venezuela, and choosing Delcy Rodriguez. Do the people of Venezuela see this as a betrayal of the democratic movement in the country?
I don't think they do, because I don't think also to what extent they actually conceive Maria Corina Machado as that precisely there, other than a faction. But it's not, I mean, that way of representing it as a light dog democratic movement, it's quite, it's quite spoon-fed for for Western audiences, basically. I mean, it's far more complex and nuanced than that, and she doesn't have that support, especially after supporting the military operation, after offering her own prize to President Trump, also after supporting what Israel is doing in Gaza. I mean, she doesn't have all of them together, and it's been plunging ever since. I mean, so this is important to see. But of course, she is a player inside of the U.S. mechanics at this point, probably on a lobby level. But it's not that there is some sort of expectation regarding her running to office. She doesn't, I mean, she's not perceived the same way inside Venezuela. It's far more diverse than the idea that they try to sell it into mainstream media, basically.
So she's not seen the same way, Machado, as obviously we are seeing it here, as you do explain to me, Diego. But actually, interestingly, Venezuela's interim Prime Minister, Delcy Rodriguez, had a phone call with President Donald Trump. Both have described it as productive. So there seems to be some confidence they can revive the economy in Venezuela and actually work together.
Well, it's a quite challenging moment, and I guess if we put in the shoes of interim President Rodriguez, I mean, it must be a constant managing of a very complex situation. And, but I mean, from a different perspective, and this has been the government position for a while, I mean, there has always been the acknowledgement of common points of interest that actually it has been undermined by the United States, by the sanctions program, by the regime change attempt of recent years. So in that sense, I mean, there's no dissonance there. I mean, what's actually a new development is the U.S. willing to engage in this kind of dialogue regardless of the situation and regardless of the illegality that brought us to this point.
And you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I want to ask you, Machado has actually suggested she would be ready to hand President Donald Trump the Nobel Peace Prize if it does help the cause in Venezuela. What do people in Venezuela make of this?
Well, I mean, it's quite frivolous for once, and this is an opinion of a Venezuelan. But beyond my take, of course, people here have a sense of pride that this kind of thing don't look good. I mean, for anyone. So it must be quite, I mean, sardonic in a way to see precisely offering this to this guy who just bombed us. But beyond the point, even beyond the point of the attack, I mean, this guy that it's, well, seemed like a very crazy, dangerous, tough guy that has been doing a lot of harm to many people in many countries. So it is diminishing from a wider perspective, you know. And I don't know, maybe, of course, I haven't heard the first one, but there must be some convoluted explanations to justify this from her supporters. But this is basically the take. These things usually don't look good inside Venezuela overall.
So it's really interesting because the White House argument to what you're saying is they needed to have a change in Venezuela because of the drugs, because they're really concerned about these coming into the United States. And this was important for them to have a safe neighboring country. Do you buy what the US is selling, Diego?
Of course not. I mean, up to this point, I think it's far more candid and obvious that this wasn't actually the concern at any point other than being functional on a procedural level regarding, you know, the nook and crannies of the U.S. system and how to also maneuver technically through Congress and otherwise in order to, you know, make it a cheaper operation in that sense, a cheaper operation to sell, by the way, to the U.S. Domestic politics and also the audience, trying to make a narrative that fits, but at the same time had so many contradictions all the way, and it was seen through, according to many polls inside the United States, as something that wasn't true. So in that sense, I mean, it's quite telling that after that, they're trying to shift the narrative. And then even if you see the discovery, I mean, the release of the second edit of the indictment against Maduro after on January the 3rd, it basically tones down a lot precisely that, and it's based also on, on what a witness that basically has been coerced to get to this point because there was this secret plea deal, it seems, in which its sentence will be reduced in order just to say something against the current government and to, you know, prove things verbally. And but they toned down the whole thing, the Cartel of the Suns thing, Cartel de los Soles, in the second edit of the indictment. So this tells you something. I mean, they're dropping precisely something that didn't matter, and even more so. Have you seen any recent attacks? But beyond even that point, it was clear when the raiding started of Venezuelan tankers that this wasn't about drugs at all. Even more, if a former president, an Honduras former president, who was actually indicted and sentenced by a U.S. federal court because of smuggling 400 tons of cocaine into the United States, was pardoned. And I'm talking about Honduras ex-president
Diego Sequera. I'm so sorry, I do apologize. We have run out of time, but thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has announced phase 2 of Gaza's peace plan. It involves disarming Hamas, rebuilding the region and creating the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza. This committee will be overseen by Trump's Board of Peace. Speaking on X, Steve Witkoff called for the immediate return of the final deceased hostage or face serious consequences. We can now go live to Tel Aviv to speak to Adi Schwartz, Director of Research, Misgav Institute, specializing in Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Adi, thank you for joining us. So after more than
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. After more than 2.5 years of devastating war, Gaza is now moving into a critical and uncertain new chapter, the second phase of the US-backed peace plan. Who's going to govern Gaza?
That's a very good question. And I think that the most important thing to remember perhaps is the first sentence in Trump's plan. Remember that the first sentence says that we must ensure that Gaza will not pose a threat anymore to its neighbors, mainly, of course, to Israel. Now, in order to ensure that, we must, first of all, ensure that Hamas disarms. We have seen what Hamas wants to do. We know that even in these days, still thousands, perhaps more than 10,000 soldiers, militants, or whatever we want to call them, are still in the strip. We know that they still have rockets and missiles. We definitely know that this is their intention. So the first thing is that the Gaza Strip completely also factions like Islamic Jihad, must be disarmed, and the entire Gaza Strip should be demilitarized. Now, I'm not certain who is going to do it. We have seen many countries, Arab, also Muslim, and other European, refusing to do that. So I don't know who's going to do it, other than the IDF, other than Israel, but that is still to be seen.
So,
another thing that...
Adi, it's really interesting because I feel like I didn't ask any questions on Hamas. I'm just asking who is going to govern Gaza, because according to Egypt, Turkey, Qatar, and the US, they are optimistic Hamas will disarm. So what's to come next?
So I'm sorry perhaps to pour some cold water on their optimism. I will be very glad to see that disarmament. I have never heard of an armed group who voluntarily, gave up their arms. But again, as you say, that's something that we should see. But to your question, who should govern Gaza? To be honest, it's less important who, it's more important the content of this new government or this new Gaza. I think that in order to ensure that Gaza never poses a threat to its neighbors, mainly to Israel, we should tackle and address the Palestinian ideology. And we cannot make this distinction between Hamas and the entire Palestinian society. Remember, Hamas is not some kind of a militia that came in from the moon. All the main characters of Hamas, Sinwar and others, are people who were born in the Gaza Strip. Hamas was elected by the population of Gaza. So we must have a fundamental change, a reform in their point of view. What is their point of view? The point of view is still not accepting the right of Israel to exist as a Jewish state in any border whatsoever. Now, as long as this is the ideology of the Palestinian society, then no matter who will govern the Strip, we will have another 7th of October next year, in 2 years, in 5 years. So everybody who wants to govern Gaza, whatever and whomever it will be, must tackle this issue. I'll give you one example. Palestinians consider themselves almost 80 years after 1948, after the creation of Israel, still to be refugees from within the state of Israel, from Jaffa, from Haifa, from Ramla. This has to stop. They still consider themselves to have a right of return. Now, that right of return means that they do not accept Israel as a Jewish state. Now, if we don't tackle these issues, if we leave them somehow to the future and hoping just to, put a technocratic government, then we'll have the same problem. As long as the intention, as long as the motivation of the Palestinian society is to undo the state of Israel as a Jewish state, the next 7th of October is only waiting.
Okay, it's really interesting because you and I are talking, and while you're talking to me, I'm just thinking of the pictures that the world saw in Gaza during what happened in the country, the bombs that Israel dropped on them, the aid, how people were starving. So there'll be an argument on each side of this. And I just want to point that out to you. But during this phase, we're talking about the second peace plan, Israel is also required to scale back its military style of policing in Gaza. Reports suggest the IDF opened fire at so-called armed terrorists in southern Gaza. We have seen this happen even during phase 1. Is Israel going to stick to its requirements, Adi? Because I think a lot of people have been asking that when it comes to aid, when it comes to all sorts of different things in Gaza.
Well, I just want to remind our viewers that 7th of October occurred when Palestinians infiltrated the state of Israel. And even now, when everybody agreed, apparently, to the Trump peace plan, again, the peace plan says very, very clearly that Hamas has to disarm. What we see from inside the territory which Hamas governs is that they have plenty of ammunition, they control everything within their territory, and I want to know, as an Israeli citizen, who exactly promises to me that there is no another 7th of October tomorrow morning.
We're not talking about the 7th of October. I've asked you if Israel is going... Everyone knows what...
the next 7th of October.
Okay, all right. Adi Schwartz. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Elon Musk's AI chatbot Grok will no longer be able to edit and undress photos of real people. It's a massive retreat from X following a global backlash and widespread concern over sexualized AI deepfakes. The announcement was made hours after a Californian prosecutor said the state was investigating the spread of these images, including ones of children. Let's discuss this in more detail with technology journalist Will Guyat. Will, thank you so much for joining me. So, earlier this week, Elon Musk was calling out the UK government for curbing free speech. Now, he's complied, seemed to have blinked first. What's your reaction to this announcement?
He has blinked first. You've absolutely nailed your summary. He was talking about the fact that he had a free speech platform. He kept repeatedly saying that his platform wasn't doing what a lot of independent child safety charities had demonstrated he was doing, or it was doing. And then it became a bizarre argument where he suggested the reason why the UK government in particular wanted to crack down and stop these non-consensual images, which are an abuse and are abuse by law. He suggested it was because the UK government thought he was a fascist. And you find yourself in these situations wondering what's true with Elon Musk. But I am very pleased that common sense or the Californian court, depending which one you decide was first, has come over him. And he stopped this because it was a huge problem. And it would have got worse if Elon Musk had refused to block it on X. Other platforms may have decided they could get away with similar things.
And it's really interesting because, as you say, common sense or a California court, the jury's out on that, indeed, Will. But so how will Grok work as an AI tool now and going forward if these changes are come in place?
One of the things about Grok that's frustrating due to the controversy that we often find with Elon Musk's treatment around content moderation, it's actually a pretty good large language model chatbot. It's quicker in many ways than ChatGPT, and its feature set has been developing incredibly quickly because Elon Musk is throwing billions of dollars at it. What this means now is that you won't be able to ask it to reimagine a photograph or edit a photograph of a woman or a younger or a teenager and put them into a bikini. Strangely, at the moment, you can still put a man into a bikini, which clearly doesn't impact the same taste and decency laws. But earlier this week, that is where Elon Musk tried to respond by posting a photograph to his millions of followers of UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer in a bikini, which showed you perhaps just how seriously he wasn't taking this at the start of the week.
I shouldn't smile, but what Elon Musk did there was a little bit slightly amusing, but wasn't serious. So at least he is taking things seriously now. But surely, though, AI is expanding and developing. I feel like at record levels, I can't ever keep up. Is there anything anyone can do to actually protect themselves from being deep-faked? Because it's a real concern for many people.
I hate to say, the only way you can avoid being deepfaked is by completely removing yourself and your likeness from the internet. That is the sadness we face. Now, for those who are public figures and celebrities, the risk is higher because their names and likenesses and their appearances can be used by people to nefariously sell stuff, or let's say politicians. It could eventually be used to start a war or all kinds of things if a fake video is being posted. But if you're concerned about this, just be careful where you're posting your content. The reality is that any of these chatbots or services, if you put a photo of something in there and even ask for it to remove, let's say, the curtain behind you, they've got the permission by the terms and conditions to use that image for however they want. So maybe less photos onto the internet if you're deeply concerned about it.
And I want to actually talk to you about something else. So, Will, we've got you now, and I want to ask you about SpaceX, because it was pretty phenomenal today what did happen. You know, we saw them getting a group of astronauts back who had apparently, one of them had not been well, so it was a medical evacuation. You must be impressed by that. Elon Musk has some qualities there.
He does. Now, I'm no space expert, but I have followed Elon Musk professionally for the last 20 or so years. And for every ridiculous decision he makes on his social network or stuff that he pontificates about online, it would appear that SpaceX has truly transformed space exploration, quite literally. And the very fact now that we've got a private company being on call for NASA, the US space agency, to go and rescue these astronauts, shows you just how far this has come. And now it's not about governments pushing to moon or somewhere else. It's about billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. And Elon Musk currently seems to be the private investor leading the way.
Yeah, I wonder when he's going to invite me on one of those space holidays. But Will Guyatt, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
A reminder of our top stories. Trump's told the killing in Iran has stopped and there's no plans for executions, but he doesn't rule out military intervention. Venezuela's opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado visits the White House following the US capture of Nicolas Maduro. And a complete retreat from Elon Musk as X announces it will remove the editing function on Grok, which has led to widespread sexualized deepfakes. And that's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Of course, follow us on X. We'll be back in a couple of hours with W News Extra. Goodbye and thank you for watching.